industry association bodies to ensure that we get a permanent forum created where seamless dialogue, discussions take place between industry and academia to ensure that the robust ecosystem that we all dream of, as we find in the developed economy. And this is something that universities and higher education institutions have always been talking about, that can we create a forum, an ecosystem, a framework, and FICCI help us with it, so that we could touch upon, discuss on all the important facets, which could then help industry to deeply engage with institutions. So for this year, we've just touched upon, taken up 5 areas. This is the 4th one, which is basically how do we bring industry closer to university, and how do university kind of help the smaller businesses, MSMEs, family-owned businesses, which again forms a conspicuous part of Indian economy and many other countries, in fact, globally. And they have been meaningfully, quantitatively, substantially contributing to the economic growth of the country. So how can we formalize it? How can we professionalize it? How can university system help or handhold such entities to ensure that we create a system which is not only robust, but also very structured, and kind of really brings that contribution? Because research have kind of stated that the more you formalize, the more you structure such businesses, entities, the more output you get on them. That's what research that kind of clearly states it. So from that perspective, we thought that we'll have a session which is a little different from the one that we had it yesterday and the one that we'll have it post this. But yes, we thought that it's important to kind of start dialogue and discussions around it. And of course, we have a galaxy and list of eminent speakers from diverse set of institutions. So we've ensured that we really have not just university speakers who've been offering such courses and consulting businesses, but also entities like Reliance, which has meaningfully and then very effectively kind of built a brand for itself. And Professor Deshpande, from that perspective, will bring that industry piece into it. So we have Professor Atul Khosla, who will moderate the entire session. And I just would take about a minute to kind of briefly introduce Professor Khosla, and then would request him to take the session forward. Professor Atul Khosla is the founder, trustee, and vice chancellor of Shulini University, one of the leading universities that's there in the state of Himachal Pradesh. And of course, he's been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years and has founded and led multiple startups. He advises several Indian and global organizations on issues of strategy and innovation, and has been independent director with Gabriel India, director with InnoHive, which is a social incubator, senior advisor to Ankur Capital, India's leading social venture capitalist fund, and of course, advisor to SEBI chairman. He started his career with McKinsey and Company, and prior to joining Shulini University, he was the MD and CEO of Oliver Wyman in India, the world's leading management consulting firm. And he's, of course, a BTech from IIT Kanpur and an MBA from Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. Over to you, Professor Khosla.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. And what a beautiful topic today. We're going to talk about family businesses, and we're going to talk about MSMEs and SMEs. So I think before I go into the introduction of the panel, which is, I think, so illustrious, I'm going to just leave 2 facts for the audience. The first is that 70% of the world's GDP is created either by SMEs, MSMEs, or family businesses. So many times we ignore the role of family businesses and SMEs and MSMEs. So that's a huge number. And unless these businesses transform themselves and become cutting edge, there's no way the world can become a better place, and that includes India. So that's the first one. The second, I think, is more important, which is that I was reading a statistic, and of course, I'll be preaching to the popes over here. We've got the experts. Most family businesses have challenges by the time they hit the 3rd generation. So how do we sort of overcome these challenges? How do we ensure there is sustainability and continuance of family businesses? So these are big topics for the country, and I think these are big topics for individual family businesses in themselves. So who could be better than talking about these than our illustrious panel? We've got Dr. Tulsi Jayakumar with us. Tulsi is the director of the Family Business Program of SPGII-MR, SPGN. She's been with the Delhi School of Economics. She's been a professor of economics and executive director of SPGII-MR. I was speaking to Tulsi, and she told me she's been doing this for the last 10 years. Lots of big names have studied with her or have taken consulting from Tulsi. So we'd love to hear your views, Tulsi, on this wonderful topic. Prashant, Dr. Prashant Deshpande. He is VP HR Strategy with Reliance Industries. And you are the number one family group in the country, of course, which is professionalized in a very sizable way. And I'll talk about my experiences with Mukesh Bhai, and I have consulted Reliance in my previous life. But I know as part of an HR strategy, this would be a big topic. And it might not just be a topic for you, Prashant, just Reliance, but you might be looking at professionalizing of vendors, which becomes a big issue as you get along. Because at the end of the day, you need to professionalize the complete supply chain. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on what's really happening. And then we've got my very dear friend, Sandeep Sanchez. Sandeep is the Vice Chancellor of Marwari University, located out of Rajkot. Very illustrious background. He's headed several government institutions. He's been in several committees. And I'm sure this is a topic right up his sleeve. So welcome, dear panelists. I think before I start, I would like to give a minute of my experience with family businesses. So I started my career in consulting around 30 years ago with McKinsey and Company, and India was just being liberalized at that point of time. I'm talking about 93, 94, 95. Most of our clients, surprisingly, at McKinsey were family businesses. And I can say without doubt that, and these were large corporates. I'm talking about, of course, the Ambanis. I'm talking about the Mahindras. I'm talking about Mafadlal was a big client. Many of them, right, were very, very, Tatas included, were large clients. McKinsey started our practice thinking that most of our clients would be MNC clients. But surprise, surprise, family businesses lapped up our consulting services. And I was very, very fortunate to have worked with 4 or 5 of them, including Reliance in a small way. Did a lot of work with the Oberoi Group, which was also still sort of quasi-family, I would say, and many others, Mafatlal, another one. And I can say without doubt that businesses that transformed themselves, that went out looking at issues of governance, transforming themselves around the strategy with support of, with a professional support, I think are way larger today. They've grown and dominate the Indian business scene. And without naming anyone, businesses that looked at it skeptically, they were ostriches saying nothing will change, I think have lost their significance in the Indian spectrum. And I think this is a story across the world. I personally consulted in 7 different countries, and I can tell you, dear audience, that's the reality of the world that you have to change. So that's a quick background to at least my 2 minutes. It is important to transform. Many of you are lucky that now we've got universities that are looking at helping some of you. We've done a lot of research on helping family businesses. We've got experts like Tulsi who do this for a living. And we've got experts like Prashant, I'm sure, who would like to engage at a mentorship level with some of you. I think if the audience is consisting of family businesses and SMEs. So you guys are lucky that you don't have to shell out crores and crores of rupees to go to McKinsey. You can go and get better advice through universities and HEIs. And let's try to understand what type of work HEIs and universities can do with you. We'll go with a 6-minute each with each of the panelists. So I'll request that if you can maintain the 6 minutes, and then we'll get into a conversation. And along the way, I'll give 1 minute of my sort of tippany, I would say, as we get into the discussion. So we'll jump into the discussion with you, Tulsi, and I hope you'll allow me to call you by your first name.
Absolutely.
And tell us about your journey. Tell us about, you started this journey 10 years back. This was still very early days. Tell us about were the challenges starting this program at SP Jain? What's been your experience? And what type of support can you provide? What type of work are you doing with the family-owned businesses and SMEs, MSMEs? Over to you, Tulsi.
Thanks, Atul. And thanks, Rajesh and the FICCI team for coming up with this really wonderful topic, because, this is my 3rd decade in academia. I've spent 30 years in academics. And as I was telling Atul, I started off with my first job at SRCC in Delhi, But along the way, I have moved from just teaching economics to being an evangelist for family businesses. And that role happened serendipitously, Atul. But having said that, rather than go into my own role, I would want to talk about the topic of universities as being the game changers for India, right? And we're looking at universities as having a dual mission typically, which is research and teaching. Can universities take on a third mission? And what is that mission? That mission is to promote economic growth. That mission is to promote regional growth or national growth, call it what you may. More so regional growth, I think, would come through universities being the game changers, being the change agents for the SMEs. And as Atul pointed out to start with, you're looking at SMEs, which are more than 6.3 crores in India. 30% of the GDP comes from the SMEs, 50% of the exports come from SMEs, 11 crores is the kind of employment generated. And so therefore, there is no way in which you could kind of say that SMEs are small, and so policy should concentrate around the large business. Unfortunately, that still continues to be the case. Now, what is it that universities should be doing? And what is it that we have done along the way? So Atul, I'll probably take that up in my second section. But at my initial comments would be that how do universities really look at capitalizing the knowledge, right? How do they work along with SMEs in order to bring about change, or FMBs to bring about the change? And in order to do that, you need to understand the nature of family businesses as being very, very different from the large businesses. My first question to my eminent colleagues here and to myself is that is university even trying to create people who are employable, right? Because the kind of education system that we have in India across most universities, and I'm hoping that Atul, you and Dr. Sandeep and Prashant, all of you are doing your own little wee bit in trying to bring about a change. But I can tell you that at SPJMR, we started this journey 25 years back, and that was because of the leadership, right? You have a leadership which is visionary, which knows that we need to serve underserved segments. And one of those underserved segments is the family business and the SME sector, right? What is it that FMBs, so SPJMR, as you know, is ranked the top among the business schools in the country. So other than teaching just the, or producing just the managers, we also took it upon ourselves to produce owners, right? So how do you inculcate risk-taking? How do you inculcate ownership among an entire generation of science in the family businesses? Because as Atul rightly said, if they do not have the right kind of incentive, most talent which is within the family gets lost to the family because they're leaving that. How do universities really try and generate the sense of entrepreneurship, the sense of ownership, which is associated with being part of a family business or being part of an SME? So that would involve a whole set of things. And that is what I would want to touch upon in probably my second section. But when you're looking at family businesses, you're looking at not just trying to preserve the family and to scale and grow the family, the business part of it, but you're also looking at trying to keep the family together, because there is research across the world which says that by the third generation, you look at family businesses really, dwindling. So how do you make sure that you have family businesses which say last 4 generations, 7 generations, and still going strong? Now, those are aspects which involve curriculum, which involve pedagogy, okay? And it's probably not pedagogy is the wrong word to use, come to that later, right? You need to look at what kind of capabilities and skills that you're creating in the students. You're also looking at, can you really be the hub of change which goes beyond just the curriculum? Can you provide consultancy? Can you provide bespoke services to the MSMEs? Could you have departments within the university which could actually provide those kind of services? And the big challenge then is where are you going to get the resources? Do you have the capabilities, right? So those are my initial comments. I don't know whether I'm keeping time, Atul, but I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Tulsi. I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I'll just take a minute talking about what I believe is the importance of universities or HEIs. So if you go around the world, large economic hubs across the world are driven by universities or HEIs. And I'll give a few examples over here. Let's go to the Silicon Valley. That's driven by Stanford and UC Berkeley. Let's come east. We've got the high-tech corridor. You'll see that driven by Harvard and MIT. Come down a little south, Princeton drives the health corridor of New Jersey health corridor of the United States. Let's come to China. The manufacturing corridor of China is driven by Tsinghua University. So universities will play a great role in building the ecosystem. And you've just said it so right, Tulsi. It's going to be a combination, of course, about great education, where we create employable youth, but it's also about innovation. How do we bring innovation into the ecosystem, research into the ecosystem? Are we providing relevant research to SMEs and MSMEs? Because these really are the institutions that can't invest that much into large labs. And of course, BHEIs have large labs. And finally, it's about consultancy. So anyway, that's what we do at Shalini. We've got a great and big industrial hub in Baddi next door. And I'm very, very active with multiple platforms. But I'd like to come to Prashant because I'd love to hear it from the other side. You're the practitioner. This whole debate about academia, industry, experiences, I think is right now a debate, and the jury is still out whether the mechanism works. So help us understand your perspective, Prashant. Do you think universities in India are able to support you? If yes, how, and how would you like universities to play a bigger role? And some advice to our fellow family and SME owners. Over to you, Prashant.
So thank you, Atul. First of all, I am grateful to FICCI to invite me for this panel discussion full of eminent educationists. So my humble take on this subject is based on 2-3 associations I've had. I've had opportunity to do my PhD at INSEAD, which is the foremost school, this school in the world, which had one of the first family entrepreneurship and family business departments, full-fledged departments in the world. I had privilege of working with 2 corporations, Wipro and Reliance. Both of them started as family business and grew to be really large public corporations. And also, third thing, recently I have been playing, in addition to my day job, a small role in building up one higher educational institution, that is Geo Institute, which is promoted by Reliance Foundation. So based on these 3, I have certain perspectives which I would like to share. First of all, the educational institutions have a role in helping supporting growth of all industries, whether family or whether they are not run by promoter families. How they can do it is the second question. So when it comes to how, we need to look at what higher education institutions and universities do. Essentially, they do 2 things conventionally. One is research and second is teaching. The other 2 areas which have increasingly become more common over a period is, one is consulting partnerships, and fourth is universities acting as the entrepreneurial hubs. So in all these 4 mandates that universities have, they can play a key role in supporting the family businesses and MSMEs. In case of research, there was lack of knowledge in the last century about the way family businesses work. There was very little research, but in the last 2 decades, there has been explosion in the scholarship on the family businesses in the management literature. So now more academically rigorous, robust content is available in terms of theories, perspectives, points of view, case studies. All these need to be incorporated into the courses, curricula, and the family business learners from the promoter families, and also professionals who are working at the next level. They both need to be educated and made and should be given benefit of this burgeoning field of knowledge. Then other area is in the educational sphere. These schools have done remarkable work in developing the executive leadership programs, as well as MBAs and dedicated family business full degree programs. But there are other universities more than B school. Universities have engineering schools, liberal arts schools, full-fledged universities have design schools these days. Design is a big area. So a lot of field, even medical schools. Some of the, like I have relatives who have hospitals, and now they are trying to hand over the assets to the next generation. And they struggle. I must say that every professional in every field, people struggle with the transfer of baton to the next generation. So the family business related electives can be included, or even joint degree programs, JD programs can be considered with other domain related educational institutions. We need innovation rather than leave it to B school kind of thinking. We need a more robust out of the box thinking to structure the programs, which will give opportunity across schools of a university, so that family businesses are supported. Then a lot of changes, social changes are happening. Now earlier, only people used to think of passing the baton to sons. Now women are from the business families are increasingly taking a role in businesses, and daughters are considered now as equally worthy successors as sons. So they have their own set of challenges. Society has not fully changed. So dedicated kind of programs which will support the girls to come up and contribute in the family business leadership, those also can be considered. A lot of scope for innovation. Then consulting is an area where, again, educational institutions can play a big role. Certainly domain consulting and professionalizing management consulting, but also creating robust governance structures for the family businesses, like boards of directors and family councils. These two institutions, can they be separate and can coexist? How should they coexist? How should be this structured? Lot of such niche topics the B schools can provide handholding with. So in my view, there are multi-pronged opportunities of engagement and supporting family businesses for universities. B schools will play a leading role because bulk of the issues related to family business, unique issues, B schools management literature has better understanding, but larger university can play also a very big role by weaving in, incorporating the needs of family business, addressing them in all the types of activities that universities and higher educational institutions do. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. I think this was really, really path-breaking. You spoke about multiple issues that family-owned businesses have and how institutions can support it. I think we'll come to a question that I'm going to ask you later on, which is to say, what's your experience been so far as a practitioner? But let's go over to Sandeep. Sandeep, this is a thought for you. You do a lot of work, I'm told, in academia, industry, partnerships. My belief is that most of us, try to start that relationship at large corporates, but really, if you look at impact, the biggest impact can happen if we start interacting with SMEs, MSMEs, and family-owned businesses. So again, the same question is for you, your perspectives about how universities and HEIs can play a role in the ecosystem and the type of work you're doing at Marwari University. Over to you, Sandeep.
Sure. Thank you, Atul, and thank you, FICCI, for this introduction. At the outset, I should say that I'm the least qualified to comment or make a mark on this particular topic because I'm not necessarily a business person or having had exposure to business. The only claim I can have to be on this panel is I'm a resident of Rajasthan and currently serving in Gujarat. And these are the two places very well known for family businesses. Not only that I'm by my location or birth, I'm a Marwadi, and I also serve Marwadi University. So once again, a small claim on that sort of a thing. And I wish I were an entrepreneur and not an academic, because when I graduated, I certainly wanted to be something of that nature. But the circumstances or maybe the conditions for external support were not such that I could have gone in that direction. Having said that, I'm now leading a very young university, and which is trying to do its bit in the domain of what you call family businesses or promoting family businesses. We are only 5.5 years old. We have only started our center something like 6 to 8 months back with the one leader and few other followers there. And therefore, we are making a beginning in this particular domain, but we will just try to suggest to you that what are our approaches or what are our methods in this particular case. My own understanding of the subject says that a real challenge with that is legacy. What my grandfather did, what my father did, with what values and intentions and other things they did, probably same thing cannot flow when it comes to the next generation. And both of you said, Tulsi and Atul, that after 3 generations, after 2 generations, starts waning away in terms of interest in that. That might be the reason that they don't necessarily carry the same legacy or heart into it. How to maintain that, how to develop that, how to push it, or maybe remove it, doesn't matter, because businesses, in my opinion, can be, the family businesses can be something of 3 nature. One, I want to do family business, but I want to start my own thing, not necessarily my father's thing. The second thing possibly could be, I'm continuing with what my father or grandfather did and expand it and build on that. And the third possibly could be for me is continuing with whatever my father, grandfather, or family does, possibly, but I will add newer dimensions to that. Means I'm in the main core business, but I'm adding newer dimensions to that. All 3 cases could be very different when it comes to handling them in a given institution, and we are trying to segregate our help to the students in these 3 baskets, if you can say so, that what they want to do. So that's one. Legacy, whether you want to continue or you want to start your own legacy, I think people have natural craving for that, that I would like to start something of my own. I know I ended up awarding few top-notch entrepreneurs last year at Chennai, and they were entirely different from what their families were doing. And of course, newer methods were there. The second challenge family businesses will entail for anyone, whether it's you or me, Atul, is multitasking. Are we capable of multitasking? Multitasking is something very essential, and it's not necessarily very natural to all of us. We should be trained for that. When I say multitasking, I think I'll need good financial management and cash flow control. I'll probably need good control on marketing and those strategies. I'll possibly need, in addition to technology, I'm saying I'm a technologist. I believe technology is always there with us or people like me. And then obviously we'll need clearances and supports and various other bureaucratic things which are there sometimes. These, clearances on, let's say, the aspects of pollution and things and Factories Act and this and that really kills you sometimes. And then how to manage the change thing or innovation thing. I think these are some aspects which 1 or 2 or 3 people in the family at the most will have to drive. and you would not be knowing that, and you are not in a position to employ people in a big way. I think that's a challenge in family business. Unlike the big corporates, you do not have those expertise easily available. So what we are trying to do in our case, obviously, like any other academic institution, we have started courses on that. I'm not qualified to describe those courses because I'm not from management side, but yes, there are pool of courses. I think Madam Tulsi will probably throw more light on that. And we have also done that. Maybe we had learned from what you guys are doing and that we are following it. We also started doing surveys right at the entry point to assess who are interested in that. What can be given to them? What can be the direction they can take? What kind of courses or other things they can do? Fortunately, with us, we have started that our or leaders here are spending one-to-one sessions with 4 to 5 people every day who are interested in these. And these are not necessarily management students only. These may be the technology or other students also. And fortunately for us, a lot of international students are there, and they are showing and they are queuing up for that because they think when they go back to their home, they will be interested in these kind of things, which is happening in India. So that's there. And we give something like 30 minutes to 45 minutes to each student per session on one-to-one basis. Then, of course, mandate has been, like any other management program, developing the case studies. And this is what is happening. Not that we can claim right now that we have done something. On the interesting side, which is a common model, that how we promote this, that you get the taste of what you are going to do in your family business, is that we have started our final year as an entrepreneurship semester. If you are willing to do so, you'll have to make a head start in pre-final semester or maybe earlier semesters, get qualified, showcase and show the seeds of what you intend to do, how you intend to do. And then you'll be measured on your attempt, not necessarily success, that you generated patent or profit or whatever, something. No, that's not the case. It will be only on your attempt that you have been attempting it successfully. You will be allowed to do so. So these are some of the efforts which we, in our limited way, we have thought. And since I said Marwadi University, I must say that it's located in Rajkot, supposed to be a very, very big industrial city, close to Jamnagar, Prashantji, close to you in some sense. And, it's a happening city because last year it was rated as world's 7th fastest growing city by international agencies through a survey or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of business which is thriving here. And last thing which we have done in our institution is one for foundry and one for tiles. We have created centers of excellence where anyone can bring their problem, whether it is a quality or measurement or automating processes for small industries, and we are helping them with these kind of efforts. So that's our initial take on the family business or SMEs or MSMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. What beautiful work, and I congratulate you for this wonderful thinking. I'm going to come back to you with real life experiences on how it's working with the local population, especially like I said, SMEs, MSMEs, and family-owned businesses. But I'm going to go to Prashant now, and it's a little bit of a tough question. You have the obligation to say no comment, but I think the audience would like to understand how does the biggest Indian family think about legacy, the type of issues that Sandeep raised? How do I'm sure you're thinking about it all the time. How do the Ambanis think about ensuring that there's longevity of the Reliance brand, of the family name, and ensuring that the growth and governance continues and contribution to the nation continues? Would love to hear your thoughts.
So thank you, Atul. As a professional, I'm not privy to all the thinking that goes on in continuing the family legacy in the in our esteemed first family. But some of the behaviors and some of the practices I have observed are something which I can make intelligent guess about. Based on that, I can make intelligent guess about what might be the thinking. So, and it's a public knowledge. Shri Mukesh Ambani has publicly said what are his thoughts about an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is someone who doesn't need to be told what to do. He figures out what to do. That's a famous statement by our chairman. So when he and Anil Bhai were introduced in business, he was given the kind of freedom, of course, within boundaries, so that assets and business are protected, but they were given the freedom. Similar freedom, similar responsibility in a graded manner, gradual manner, he is also giving to the next generation, that is Isha, Akash, Anant, in various parts of the business and also the social activities which are done by the group. So that's the way to go about it. There are multiple ways, like even before this, I worked with Wipro, and Mr. Premji also introduced his son, Rishad, into the business. In fact, he got into Harvard the day I got admission from INSEAD for my PhD program. And Mr. Premji was one of the referees for me in my PhD admission. So I had gone to thank him. And he said that I got two good news today, one for my son and one for you. So he introduced his son in a different manner. He introduced his son as a formal professional manager, and then made him report to formally some of the professionals employed by the company, and then gave him the responsibility of running the corporation. There is no one way of introducing the family talent into the business. It's the entrepreneur's call. He knows his business, the culture of the business. He knows the he knows also the next generation individuals, what are their learning needs, what is their readiness. So there have to be multiple models and multiple approaches of managing the whole process of transition. So we should trust the wisdom of the entrepreneur who builds the business, and also support him in doing the best in continuing his legacy. Thank you.
I think so beautifully said. Trust the entrepreneur who's built the business. Absolutely bang on. The topic is also about how can HEIs and universities play a bigger role. And my 2 cents, Prashant, and to the others and in the audience is that focus also becomes very, very important in our role, in a sense that it's such a vast area. You've been speaking a lot about governance. Sandeep spoke about technology. Tulsi spoke about consulting. So the range of support that MSMEs, SMEs, family-owned businesses need is huge. And as HEIs, we need to build expertise in 1 or 2 areas where we think our university or HEI has expertise. I'll give a small example. At Shulini, for example, we are strong believers that innovation and research is what's going to lead India. And we've put disproportionate effort around innovation and research, whether it's about helping our fellow SMEs in filing patents. We are one of the highest patent filers in the country. Whether it's about doing joint research with them, both, by the way, on basic research and applied research, or it's about doing research on issues around governance, or working together with them with institutions like FICCI or CII and hand-holding them. So I think the point I wanted to make to fellow HEIs is, narrow down where you think you can support. Otherwise, the issue is very big. And I've been on both sides, Tulsi, as from the industry and also from the academia. There's going to be a disconnect. So I'm going to come to you, Tulsi. And my question to you is, if I'm a university, if I'm an HEI, and I want to build now a center of excellence for family-owned businesses, SMEs, MSMEs, give me the magic potion, give me the mantra, give me the secret sauce. What should be step 1 to step 5? How do I go about building this center of excellence that you've so beautifully done?
So I will try and draw from my own experience, right? So we're looking at, first of all, when you look at universities, typically there is a one size fits all kind of an approach. You have to move away from that. You have to understand the ecosystem that you're working with. You have to understand the problems that these SMEs face. And that is really going to make a difference in the way in which you are going to come up with your offer. So at SPJMR, in the Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship, we are looking at focusing on 3 primary verticals. The first vertical is, of course, teaching. The second is research. And the third is capacity building. Now, let's look at the teaching per se. Now, teaching cannot be that you're just another MBA program offering the typical MBA courses, right? So if I'm looking at, say, the kind of courses that we are offering, as part of our curriculum. One is that we have a 4-pillar kind of an approach. A participant who comes in from a family business needs to understand about his business. There is no doubt about that. But he also needs to understand about his family, right? We're talking about legacy and so on, but a huge amount of problems come in from the point of view of family dynamics. So there was this one particular session which I remember. I was doing a session with the FMB students on tests of a prince. It's an HBR article, and I was adapting that and doing that with them, the tests of a prince. Okay, and there was this tall, well-built guy who comes and tells me, ma'am, what you teach me in economics, what they teach me in marketing or finance and so on, they kind of pale in comparison to this particular session that you have done with me, because my father does not want to give up, the control over the family business. So understanding the curriculum that you need to build is going to be critical. As I said, 4 pillars, try and give them the requisite business knowledge, but not from the perspective of the HULs and the PNGs of the world, but you really talk about small and medium enterprises which have really built their way and which have scaled and grown. So that's one. The second is talk to them about their own family and the dynamics of the family. Now, within this, if I'm talking about just going and telling a participant that, look, you need to build in governance, makes really no sense, because he's not or she's not the person who's making that kind of a decision, right? And that is where we come in. We have at least 3 to 4 mentor-mentee workshops that we conduct as part of our curriculum. So we bring in the seniors and they sit together with the participants, and there could be a wide variety of topics ranging from things like professionalizing the business to things like induction, succession, working together. And again, I would like to give you an anecdote. At the end of a workshop, there was this one mentor who tells me that, and we were talking about working harmoniously together. And he put it beautifully. He said, I have always been telling my son that he should wake up in the morning and he should go for a jog with me, because I get up at 5 a.m. and I'm jogging. He gets up at 8 a.m. and he's going to the gym, right? And now after this workshop, I realized that if the end goal is the same, how does it matter what you're doing, right? So bringing in that perspective into the mind of the mentor, shaping them, is critical. And for us, it starts from the interview stage, which I call it more of a sensitization rather than a selection process, because you need to prepare the business. You need to prepare the family for this new person who's coming into the business, who is going to come in with completely different ideas, right? So your curriculum has to take into mind that. It also has to be about the society and how they could contribute to the society. Typically what happens is this, Atul, and I hate to say it, these fly-by-night operators, consultants who are consulting the SMEs, and I'm talking about SMEs, Prashant, not about the Ambanis and the Wipros of the world, they would typically come in and say, Tujhe 10 पैंतरे सिखाता हूं, right? Let me teach you the 10 tricks to evade taxes, to do this, to do that. And that is where is the death knell for these guys. And so, bringing in the society aspect, bringing in a values aspect, bringing in the fact that you can actually create value through values. These are also things that we believe in as part of the curriculum. And the fact is that you cannot run it the way you would run a typical MBA, where they are sitting there and studying 24/7. Our curriculum is actually more, it's not a pedagogic practice. I would call it more an andragogic practice, or even a heutagogic practice, where you're basically leaving it, the onus is on the student to learn. And we believe in using the business as the laboratory, where they can go out and test whatever they have learned in the classroom in 1 week. They go and apply it over 3 weeks, right? So it's not a full-time program, it's a modular program. So this is the curriculum part of it. And just, I know I'm taking a little more time, Atul, but just bear with me on this one. The pandemic, serendipitously, I think it's also important for the leadership to be entrepreneurial. So because Mumbai was shut, I took my students, because I promised them that, do three sessions online, and I'll take you to wherever, it's open. So we took the students to Ahmedabad, and we collaborated with EDI. EDI gave us the infrastructure, and we ran our classes in EDI in Ahmedabad. And then while I was driving back from Ahmedabad, it suddenly struck me, why shouldn't I be doing this once over the entire program? So now what I've done is, and in May, we're taking the students to Srinagar for a week. So their one contact, as we call it, is going to be done in Srinagar, where we will be interacting with entrepreneurs out there, and they will be learning about how do you build a business amidst adversity. What is the importance of resilience? Now, these are the softer issues and the softer aspects, which I think universities need to really focus on as well. It's not just about teaching them how to read a balance sheet, but it's also about building that attitude. So this is one pillar. The second pillar is, and there is a continuous professional development angle also. So we are working with the women in business families, offering programs for them rather than just the 21, 25-year-olds. We're also doing research with them. I mean, there are articles which many of our faculty members are publishing regularly. And the third aspect is, and we've just inaugurated something in January of this year, we have an accelerator program by the name of Riddhi. So again, a serendipitous thought which came up, we have a whole bunch of people who are fund seekers, a whole bunch of guys who are fund providers, right? And you have the institute, which is a 41-year-old institute in between, which can actually connect these guys. So the role of SPJMR, the Center for Family Business, is basically mentoring these guys who are the fund seekers, and to kind of organize a pitch fest where the fund providers, who are also alums, can facilitate both by way of their own advice, networking capital, and other kinds of engagement capital and other kinds of capital besides financial capital. So there's a whole lot of stuff that we are doing, Atul. But the topic for the day is HEIs and SMEs. So to me, there are 2 or 3 things that we need to concentrate on. It is the why we want to do it. It is the how we want to do it. And it's also going to be about the challenges. And the big challenge to me is to get people, okay, whether it is staff, faculty, whether it is leadership, who's actually on board. Otherwise, it's very sexy to keep talking about entrepreneurship. Everybody talks about entrepreneurship, but the biggest entrepreneurship happens amongst the FMBs. And that's not even being recognized today.
Absolutely.
We're talking about startups.
I'm going to come back to you, Tulsi, but I have one question for you. Give us a sense, you're doing so much and you're the leader in India on this particular front. What's the size of your team? How large is this team at SPJ?
So if you look at the size of the faculty pool.
I'm talking about your center of
excellence. Administrative team, we are just about 10 or 11 of us by way of staff. By way of the faculty, we have about 45. But Atul, almost all of them are visiting professional faculty. They're all consultants in the SME space. They are not your guys who are, we have about, say, a 30% who are core faculty, but 70% would be people who actually consult with SMEs regularly. The point that we have made is you cannot consult until they become consenting adults, which is after they finish their program. So
I think it's an important role, because I was coming to how can HEIs build this platform. And I think it's an important point that leverage the experience of people around. So I'm going to come to you, Sandeep. You mentioned that you're building this particular center of excellence. You're starting to work with the industry around Rajkot. Help us understand your journey. How are you planning to build this center of excellence? What are like step 1, step 2, step 3 for you?
So, journey has been very small, as you know, as I've already told you. So it won't be something very unique as against what has been shared. But what has been unique is some of the efforts which can be put into this and some of the special directions. Number one, for me would be that if I were to today get an admission in engineering or management program, I'll be getting a stereotyped education, which obviously would be either a pure mechanical or civil or chemical or maybe pure management and some specialization and all that. Getting exposed to diversity of courses which might be needed in my family business possibly was not there, or if it was there in a very, very limited way. So fortunately, NEP talks about that, all the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary, intradisciplinary, everything what you call. And therefore, a student who intends to go into this kind of business can get into this very easily by doing whatever. They can come to SPGen for 2 courses. They can do 1 odd course, project-based learning in Reliance. They can come to Atulji for doing something, and yet they can get my degree or your degree, whatever it may be. That's the beauty. ABC is a scheme which is important to do so, Academic Bank of Credit, and we are seriously pushing for implementing it. We are not bothered what is necessarily a degree or diploma out of that. No, what is learning out of that is more important. And when it is required, it's learned and then done. So I think implementing that is something very important. Another initiative which we have done, I would not say I, in the sense that the guy who we have taken here has a good bit of experience in this particular domain. And he claims to have developed his own model for studying the successes or potential successes of these models based on some parametric studies. And it is not yet copyrighted or patented or whatever you can say, but he's still working on that particular tool. And we intend to develop that business tool to help people understand what is their potential, where they are going right or wrong. So using IT as a service to get into that domain as a measurement. Many times we go under a scanner machine and machine tells us what is right and wrong about our body. I think in the same way, something can be done about this kind of an effort, that what is right and wrong with your business possibly can be pointed out. How significantly successful it will be will depend upon the engine and the databases we are able to create, but we are in process to do that. So once again, I cannot lay a claim on that what we have done and what we have achieved, but intent is there. And the third thing which we are trying to do, Government of India, I think there was a mention about Center of Excellence by others also, including Tulsi, that these can help do right things in educational setup or maybe expose the students. Government of India with DST has recently started an initiative to develop such centers in each state, by the way. And if I'm not wrong, till now they have done it 6 or 7 in 6 or 7 states in India. In one state, 2, other states possibly 6, they have done it. And this time we have applied with full force with our interest in that, because we think we can contribute to that. So that would be a repository for so many things. It will be a platform for so many things which are there, exchanges. And then, of course, as you know, that it has to be more hands-on. It has to be learning by doing and so on and so forth. So all that can happen through that particular center. It is not yet sanctioned. It is still in the initial stages of screening, but we are quite hopeful that it will come to us. Essentially, whatever is required as a support system, as a pillar for supporting family businesses, is what we are trying to create, a little bit with some penchant for innovation or different methods, you can say, is what we are trying. And hopefully the program, the seekers of the program will get more hands-on thing. Madam has very rightly said, take them to Kashmir or bring them to EDI, wherever. Whatever you can do, you should do. But there are elements, Atul, which I think are very, very difficult to deliver. And I firmly believe for family business, one should be very capable in the domain of what you call risk taking. Leave the goodies of your life that had I been in, let's say, McKinsey or Bain or whatever, and I would have earned so much, and now I'm in family business for 4 years, I'm getting ragged, running pillar to post, and nothing is happening. Government is not helping. I think risk taking and resilience, both are very important. How do we deliver it in our educational setup while they are with us for 2 years or 4 years? I think is something very difficult. I have not been able to fathom right kind of answers for these attributes to be delivered. We talk about it, but we need to find some solutions, and hopefully SP Jain or Reliance will help us in these kind of aspects in times to come. So that's something different which we are trying to do at Marwat. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. I'm smiling because somewhere I'm on the other side too. You know, I stepped into my father's shoes, who started Shulini, and I'm smiling because I came from McKinsey and I moved from first class travel to economy travel. And it was, you know, and Prashant is laughing because he knows how important it is for professionals. You spend half your life fighting about these perks. Jokes apart, I'll first of all request the audience, if you have any questions, please, we've got, I think, 10 odd minutes. Shoot your questions. We'll be delighted to answer those. So we'll wait for them. But till then, Prashant,
Atul, can I make a small point?
Yeah, please go ahead, Tulsi.
Yeah.
Please go.
So, you know, I just wanted to say, Dr. Sancheti spoke about, you know, how they are trying to build this. It's very important for universities to actually collaborate. It's a space which has to be treated as collaborative. And when I say that, you know, we went to EDI, I mean, I don't think anybody would actually reach out to another educational institute to say that, can you give us your infrastructure? And we would love to be there. We are exploring more things with EDI also. So when I'm going to Srinagar, I am not just going to a hotel and running my classes in a hotel, because you wouldn't want to do that. So tying up with NIT Srinagar there, which would probably give us some of the space to run classes out there. The idea is, Dr. Sancheti and the others here on the panel, not to take them to a Delhi, Calcutta, you know, Hyderabad, or one of those tier 1 cities or metros, but to essentially take them to tier 2 cities so that they are able to explore opportunities out there. They're able to see entrepreneurs out there, and they're able to see whether they could scale up. The whole idea is that when these guys are with us for 18 months, you know, and they're actually there just 1 week in these 18 months, how do we build that risk taking? How do we build that entrepreneurial capability? How do we build that desire and the fire in the belly for them to go out and say, I want to make a difference to my business, right? So it goes beyond the curriculum, Atul. It just goes beyond the curriculum.
Absolutely, Tulsi. Next time, please don't go to Srinagar, come to Kasauli. We should tie up.
Yes.
I'm also welcoming her to Rajkot and Jodhpur, the 2 cities which I belong to. They completely thrive on MSMEs or SMEs only. Please come and see the ecosystem, that how well they are doing.
So I was coming to Prashant, and my question, and I'm going to sort of increase the pace of the discussion, Prashant. So just a minute each. Your experience with universities so far, are you happy? Please give an honest answer. Have you really worked with any university in India or overseas, and what's your experience, and what can we do as academicians to come up with a pace to solve your problems?
Yeah, so I have been a doctoral researcher, not exactly a faculty at INSEAD. So I knew what was happening in the department. It was a very robust department led by Professor Phil Anderson, who is a well-known name in the entrepreneurship and family business globally. I've been briefly an educator. When I was doing PhD, to support myself, I taught in some local school universities in Singapore. But apart from that, I have not been actually an educator, except running the training programs within the within Reliance.
No, my question is slightly separate, Prashant. You at Reliance, do you have good experiences of working with any university in India or overseas on issues like these? And what will be your advice to us as academicians?
Personally, I have not worked on any such mandate with a university, but my advice to Indian universities is to create a more robust, rigorous learning content around the needs of the family business and MSMEs, because people don't want to learn the case studies which which describe some very different other cultural milieu in US, etc. anymore. People want very, very contextual learning. So building robust learning content which is grounded in our needs, our experiences. We are a $3 trillion economy, so about to be $3 trillion. So that is going to be very critical, and that is a collective endeavor. No one education. SP Jain is doing great work. Marwadi University is certainly trying to make its mark now coming up. There are multiple universities doing good work in India in this area, but we have a long way to go before we reach the quality standards which are best in the world. That's what I can say.
So that thanks for being honest. I think I was pushing it towards that. We have to pull up our socks as academicians and start doing work which is more relevant to our customer base. In this case, SMEs, MSMEs, and family-owned businesses. I'll also like to add, if there are HEIs listening to us, be part of industry bodies like FICCI, CII, or SHM. I think they play a very, very important role apart from your academic work, because they'll help you connect the dots and they'll help you ensure that you understand the problems and the pace of industry, which might be very different from the pace of academia. So Sandeep, one question for you. In your bigger strategy of Marwadi, how important is industry academia?
I don't think so that anyone can afford to say it's not important today. Forget about my own university. I've been trying to do such things for a long, long time. And however important it may be, there are few things which we need to really resolve between industry and us to promote it. Desire is there. Platforms have been created. The continuity is a question whether it's maintained, and efficacy, of course, is a question that whether it has yielded the right kind of results or not. So those differences which are there is industry obviously is looking for what we call for-profit operations, and institutions do not, unfortunately, in India. Second, industries generally would want their answers in short term, because Indian industry is not meant for much of research orientation. They want short-term problems to be solved, whereas academia is only geared up and maybe better when it comes to be a timed or a long-term problem, futuristic or kind of thing. The third thing possibly is we are more focused on teaching principles and ability to learn, whereas industry want what is the latest you're bringing on the table and how you can help us. The fourth thing could be industry gets extensive support from, I believe, I may be slightly prejudiced here because I'm on the other side, that they get a lot of support packages, whether Corona, COVID is there or not, but education institutions do not. A government is not investing enough. This budget of 95,000 crores with 70% going to school education. There is nothing left for higher education after you take away 100 central funded institutions. The point is, we are just trying to survive on our own, and that is what is killing this kind of an effort. However, having said all that, I must say that, like, to create a permanent bridge between industry and ourselves, I've created a model. I call it Faculty Industry Immersion Program. I pay for everything. I give the leave to my to my faculty. They go up to 15 days with no obligation to industry and no cost to industry. They spend some time there, make a bridge with them, learn what problems they face, what tools they use, what processes they follow. Bring those as an example, bring those as a connect, and bring them into teaching. So we have created some unique models to promote what we call industry immersion or industry connect within our educational system. And we can only try such small things at our level right now. Hopefully, there'll be new models coming from others and we'll follow that. Thank you.
So small leaps lead to big journeys and big changes, Sandeep. So congratulations once again on your small steps. We're coming sort of to the end, and I'm going to request each of my speakers to give their 1 minute. So we've just got 1 minute for your last thoughts, and I'm going to start with Tulsi. So Tulsi, your last 1 minute.
So all I will say is that drawing on what Dr. Sanchetti said, in fact, I wanted to mention that as well. There has to be a connect between the government, the universities, and the SMEs. Because one way in which the government helps the SMEs is directly, but if there is funding which is provided to universities and institutions like ours, it would help because funding is a major constraint.
Fantastic. Prashant, your context, your 1 minute.
Yes, there has to be really robust incentives, public policy incentives for collaboration between higher education institutions and the MSMEs and family businesses. And they have to be for multiple types of collaborations, not a single type, as I mentioned, the research collaborations, the learning collaborations, the entrepreneurship and institution building collaborations. For all kinds of collaborations, there has to be as a part of overall policy framework, a very, very robust set of incentives, which will propel both the constituencies to come together and create a robust collaboration ecosystem. So what those are, the experts like those on this panel should deliberate and decide in detail, but there has to be a strong policy framework of incentives. That much I can say.
Thank you, Prashant. Sandeep, your last 1 minute.
Yeah, the answer from my side is simple. Collaborations can be many, as Prashant was saying. And therefore, I would say that number one, we should have champions for each of such MOUs or associations or partnerships or whatever it is. One person heading called Industry Institute Interaction Cell, governed or mandated by AICT, is not going to serve the purpose. For every small activity, we should have champion. And number two, I've seen the best of the institutions when I assess them on some counts here and there. They have budget for academics, they have budget for internationalization, they have budget for research, they have budget for every damn thing, but there is no budget for industrial connect or industrialization or something of this particular nature. Unless you pump in some sort of a money targeted towards certain efforts, the results will not be there to be seen. I think so. My effort or my suggestion would be make champions, multiple champions in your given setup according to your needs, and also earmark budget for them to take activities more serious.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. This has been an extremely enriching session. I think one of the best, at least I've moderated, and I've done more than 500 over the last 1 year. I'll just try to summarize some of the things that I've learned. Prashant, you spoke very beautifully about the fact that one answer doesn't fit all. So there'll be different business models which will be available for families in terms of how they do succession planning and how they move ahead in terms of growth. And you spoke about Wipro versus Reliance, beautiful thoughts. You spoke about partnerships and collaborations and policy efforts needed. So these were like two very big takeaways from my side. What you spoke about, Tulsi, I learned how to build such an institution. You spoke about, the fact that you don't need full-time faculty. You should leverage faculty from across the industry. This will also enhance your collaboration efforts, your partnership, and it'll be relevant. And I think both you and Prashant also spoke about relevant content, relevant learning for SMEs, MSMEs, rather than just case studies from Harvard or Stanford, so contextual case studies. And I'm sure SPJN is building such case studies. And what really what I love from the two words that you brought about, Sandeep, were risk and resilience. How do we bring risk and resilience into family-owned businesses and SMEs? I think that's so important. I see so many SMEs fail around because the young kid who goes to Harvard or any US school or even in India refuses to come back to a small town because he now wants to go to a pub in Chandigarh or Delhi and enjoy lifestyle over there rather than stay in Solon for the SME that his father or grandfather built. Anyway, we started by saying that family-owned businesses and SMEs are very, very important for our country, for the world. I call these the belly of the country. If you do not move the belly of the country, despite all the great work that Prashant and Mr. Ambani are doing, India will not move. India needs these family-owned businesses and SMEs and MSMEs to move very fast and conquer the world, export, become cutting edge. And I think the role of HEIs is going to be extremely, extremely critical. Universities is going to be extremely, extremely critical. So what we learned from Sandeep was start taking baby steps. Start seeding such institutions in centers of excellence inside your universities. Make them transdisciplinary, make them cross-disciplinary. And over time, we might become competitors to SP Jain. I take up the challenge, Tulsi. We'll see you in Kurukshetra in the next 5 years. But that's from my end. Wish you all the best and thank you very, very much. Over to you, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more than what you said, Professor Khosla. I mean, we've done so many conferences in FICCI. And if you talk about this 5 sessions that we have, this has been so different, so enriching, so insightful. I mean, we'll love to have more of such discussions going forward, because if this is what MSME and family-owned businesses are in terms of contribution to economy, might as well have more such dialogue and discussions to make it more professional as we go along. Thank you so much for this exciting session that you helped us, and I'm sure the participants would have found it very, very enriching. So for the participants' benefits, so we again assemble at 11:30 for the last session of this conference.
Before we go, Rajesh, I, in my excitement, forgot to thank FICCI, and everyone did that. So it was just my forgetfulness. But thank you, FICCI, for giving me and everyone the opportunity for this wonderful debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Atul, for a wonderful moderation of the session.
Madam Tulsi, everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we're live now.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the last session of the two-day conference that we have, and perhaps the most important one. I say most important because right from the start, since yesterday in the inaugural session, whether it was Commerce Secretary or the Higher Education Secretary or the other speakers in various sessions that we've had, one thing that was coming up time and again was how do we bring about research element into it? And whenever we talk about industry-academia interface, research was just popping up, no matter whether it was to do with an apprenticeship or internship session that we had, or a session on skilling, reskilling. I mean, just was coming through. So this was a major overlap that we found, and therefore this session becomes so important. So in other words, anything to do with industry-academia interface, research is just coming up in terms of whether it's a funding issue that's there, and how do we go about enabling the entire piece. Of course, the honorable, both the sectors, in fact, not just higher education, but also the commerce sector did mention the fact that, of course, the government is kind of looking forward to enable whatever it can in terms of not just the policy enablement, but also the fact that they're looking at major research grant also to ensure that the ecosystem that we're looking at for India going forward is kind of achieved in times to come. In fact, so from that perspective, this session becomes very, very important, and we have eminent panel out here, of course, chaired by Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, and of course, ably moderated. I mean, we have a co-chairperson, Mr. Ravi Panchanathan, who would be there to kind of, pull up questions and then take you through the entire session, and then, take up questions one by one with each one of you. So I'll quickly then kind of, introduce Mr. Ravi Panchanathan, and then I'll request him to kind of quickly get on with the session. He is, of course, the co-chairperson of FICCI Higher Education Committee, and is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Manipal Global Education, and he manages all business units and enabling functions at Manipal Global Education. I mean, he was earlier with Infosys, and where he was SBU head for the manufacturing and ECS business verticals, which together contributed something like 60% of the Infosys BPO business. Prior to that, he was with Intel, handling various leadership positions, and with Hindustan Unilever Limited. And he's a Bachelor's of Electrical Engineering from Jadavpur University and a PGDM from XLRI Jamshedpur. I would request Mr. Ravi to kind of take on with the session. Over to you, Mr. Ravi.
Thank you. Am I loud and audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. A very good morning to all of you. It's a privilege to moderate this session, and that too in presence of such a distinguished chair and panel members. So it gives me great joy to do this. Let me first start by stating some impressive facts on research. I was doing some research myself to be able to give this introduction. So if you look at some of these very impressive data out there, one, of course, is that the very recently, in 2022 QS World Ranking, the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, has been ranked the world's top research university. So that's a great endorsement for us. India has improved its ranking in the Global Innovation Index, the GII, in 2021, and we moved to the 46th place among 132 economies. India has seen an exponential increase in the number of scientific publications over the last 10 years and is in the third position globally after China and the US. This is as per the Department of Science and Technology, DST. India publishes the world's sixth largest number of peer-reviewed research papers. These numbers have grown at an annual rate of about 14% compared to a global average of about 4%. So that's really impressive. A national postdoctoral program has taken shape with a government funding of about 2,500 postdoctoral fellowships every year. NEP 2020 has clearly redefined the thrust and the focus on research and the importance of this right from the university and the higher education stage. Of course, there's been some very good news in the annual budget of 2023, where it has been announced that the defense R&D will be opened up for industry, startups, and other academia. Closer home, the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, has launched the Sudha Gopalakrishnan Brain Center to power an ambitious global project to map the human brain at the cellular and connectivity levels, with a focus on high-resolution brain imaging. This state-of-the-art center aims to become a world-renowned research center, generating unprecedented human brain data, scientific output, and technology tools. IIT Delhi, as many of you would know, has launched an endowment fund in 2019 with a target of clocking $1 billion by 2030, and has already raised funds to the tune of 265 crores. In the past 1 year alone, it was able to generate 65 crores. A very high percentage of IIT Delhi graduates have stayed back in India in the last 5 to 7 years, and 22 plus unicorns have been started by the alumni. And I think the alumni base is about 54,000 plus. The institute is also encouraging its faculty to not only file patents, but also develop them into products under faculty innovation and research entrepreneurship. A grant of rupees 50 lakhs is being extended to the faculty members for this particular purpose. In addition to sabbatical leave, they can also use up their 2 years of unpaid leave to promote their startups. I believe in some departments, every 5th faculty member has a product of his own. So therefore, I believe it ultimately boils down to a couple of 5 or 6 questions that I would like to pose before I get the panelists in. I believe it ultimately boils down to the kind of research that is being done, as in what are we trying to research and why and how it translates into innovative products, services, or processes. B, whether the expenditure on R&D is considered as an investment that leads to more efficient and optimal production methods and use of resources, or does it just to get a good feel about doing a good project? The third aspect that it boils down to is whether the private sector, a lot of industry, and we got some people, including my own, I belong to the private sector, similarly, Mr. Krishnan, whether we may be interested in investing in basic translational science and research. The industries may concentrate only on applied research projects that fetch near-term returns. Research and its application sometimes goes hand in hand, and sometimes the impact is felt decades or centuries later. So there's no one model that is successful. Finally, the last 2 questions would be in terms of whether there is a need to relook at the engagement structure between the government, industry, academia, to make the engagement more R&D friendly, more outcome focused. And last but not the least, whether there's a clear need to reassess the people competencies in the R&D industry academia partnerships. So clearly, these are the 4 or 5 things that face us when we start talking about an industry-academia relationship. So there's a real need for academia and industry to come together, to not just define appropriate research problems and provide grants, but also to be ready to collaborate and partner with each other by having industry experts work very closely with the academic faculty and vice versa, maybe even on deputation, maybe even on rotations, and work on impactful transformational outcomes. So with this limited background, let me introduce you to the chair and the panel members of this session. Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe, who has agreed to be our chair. He needs absolutely no introduction. He's been an architect of reforms in technical education at AICTE, which include mandatory student induction and internship, faculty certification and Atal faculty development programs, creating the first ever India's MOOC platform Swayam, examination reforms, innovation movements, series of hackathons, India knowledge systems, new funding schemes for supporting students, faculty and institutes. Sir, it's an absolute honor to have you chair the panel. Thank you so much. Professor Sundar Manoharan, DG, he's from Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University. Before all of you joined, I was telling him that the CV is so impressive that Professor Sundar is a renowned educationist, scientist, and an administrator who obtained his doctoral degree from the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore in 1991. He has served as a visiting professor in internationally reputed institutions, including NUS Singapore, University of California, Berkeley, Max Planck Institute, Germany, Imperial College, London, and University of Maryland, USA, and has over 30 years of experience teaching. He has 19 patents to his credit and is currently scouting Defense India startup projects, AI and IoT-based health monitoring devices. Welcome, Professor Sundar, to this panel. We look forward to listening to your erudite views. Professor Suneet Tuli, Dean Research, Shivnadar University. Dr. Suneet Tuli is a distinguished academician and an administrator with over 35 years of experience in higher education. He joined Shiv Nadar University, Delhi, NCR in May 2019 and leads the research initiatives and academic partnerships for the university. Dr. Tuli has been working towards promoting the inter-multidisciplinary research at the university and manages the externally funded research carried out by faculty, researchers at the university. Pleasure having you on the panel, Professor Tuli. Mr. Krishnan, CA, Business Unit Head for Higher Education, TC is on. He's a Business Unit Head. He carries rich experience across geographies, working closely with Fortune 500 clients across many domains. He has led several leadership positions in strategy, products, business development, and delivery. He has conceptualized several new products and platforms at TCS Eon and has won the Tata Innovista Award. Welcome, Mr. Krishnan, and look forward to hearing your industry perspectives. So without more ado, what we will do is we will first have the initial comments from the panelists. So can I request Professor Sundar Manoharan to first have an initial comment from you, sir. Dr. Manoharan.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi, and thank you, FICCI, for giving us this opportunity. Thank the chairman also for having us in this panel. Quickly, let me share some slides to drive home the point about the industry-academia interaction. So allow me to share the slides with you. Can you see the slides? Yes, sir. Okay. Now, Pandit Deen Dayal Energy University, Mr. Ravi mentioned it's PDPU. Yes, we got the name change in 2020 by our Prime Minister. So we are very grateful that we are recognized for as a university for serving the energy needs of the country. Today, when we talk specifically about the academia industry interaction, I just want to put it in the triple helix model. And also I felt that academia industry partnership is very lean unless you have the third strand, that is the government coming in. Then it makes a wholesome initiative. Therefore, I call this as an industry, academia, and government partnership. And that has truly been the signature of most of our efforts. So the first one, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of how this academia industry engagement happens. Apart from our schools, departments, the curriculum progression, the way the industry and government come in is in the form of centers of excellence, because that's one of the mission statement for us to create world-class center of excellence so that we bridge the gap between industry and academia. And at present, we have 8 in place, and you can see the amount of investments that have gone through, nearly 240 crores. And we profusely thank most of the industries who have come along the way. Maruti, Suzuki, British Petroleum, ONGC, Suzlon. I have not included Shell also. Shell has contributed $1.1 million. And recently, British Petroleum has pumped in another $400,000 recently for women empowerment. Now, each of this engagement is along an energy vertical predominantly. And the most recent one is the International Center for Excellence in Automobile. I think when Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe visited PDPU in February, this was not there. Now it has been commissioned. And what we are doing now is to slowly shift the gear from energy generation to energy storage. Those are the new verticals on which we are trying to plow in this year, although this is listed in 2020, launched by our Prime Minister, but the commissioning of this production line, truly a manufacturing prowess, this will be in place by July 2022, along with the energy storage. I just want to give a glimpse of how this is happening. This is our solar farm, and this is the automobile center of excellence. And what you see, these are deceptive structures. It's not universities, it's a gift city that is coming up at the backdrop. But this is the product line that is going to come in. There has been some delay because of the COVID, but this would give empowerment for skill training as well. More than 1,000 students we envisage that they will get a hands-on experience, not only limited to PDU. We have called for several conferences and workshops to sensitize the students from the neighboring engineering universities as well, to have a thorough walkthrough and also training on this product line. Now we are going one step reverse from cell to panel. We are now going to wafer to panel. That's another initiative that we are trying to bring in. And this is a 45 megawatt production line. Just to register what is the quantum of this manufacturing line is all about, we would be able to make 250 to 300 panels per day. That's the efficiency that we have in this product line. The other partnership that we really treasure is a skill development initiative with Maruti Suzuki. This is in place, and more than 700 students and other skilled workers have been trained in the last 8 months once the COVID started easing out. As you see from the slide, 16 skill development courses in automotive manufacturing, automotive electronics is in place. And what you see here is a real 11 feet 6-axis robo for welding as well. So there are nearly 64 modules that our automobile engineering students and mechanical students go through. Also, the electrical engineering students get a feel for how it is integrated to mechatronics. This is another engagement what we have. Now, the recently inaugurated facility is the Translational Research Center, which has several verticals. We are working on energy storage, hydrogen fuel lab. We have AI VR, but we actually have MR facility now, mixed reality facility as a teaching tool for the next generation computing. We have an Apple lab again, and additive manufacturing. This again was inaugurated by our Garner 4 months back. This is a high-end printing facility for titanium products. So we are aligning with Midani in Hyderabad, and with nuclear fuel complex, we are making special dedicated parts, titanium and stainless steel parts. We are also going to demonstrate shortly integration of wind, rooftop wind, rooftop solar, along integrated to energy storage and also to electric vehicle charging. Now, I just wanted to make a pitch. Now, when we talk about this Translational Research Center, how do we really catapult the academia to think alongside of industry? Because our thinking process is different. So we have set a different parameter called technology readiness level. Now, if we are in the habit of only making publications and conference papers and teaching, then we position the technology readiness level somewhere around 0 to 2. Then if you get a funded project, you are translating 2 to 4. And if you're going into the patent domain, licensing domain, you're in 5 and 6. And then if you are ready to go with prototype pilot projects, that's the place where you really want to license, sell the patents. We put it around 8 to 9. So every student who is at PDU or faculty necessarily need to realize in their life cycle how they transform from one TRL level to the other. That is not limited only to the engineering students, but also to the students in liberal arts and in management as well. Now, to position this, we had to completely modify our curriculum. And we call this as transforming education. Thanks to COVID, during conformity, we literally had to redo the entire system, revamping in the form of Industry 4.0. I should tell you, more than 35 to 40% of course revision has happened in every single course. Therefore, we sort of attempt to call ourselves as an Industry 4.0 prone university, because our mindset is like that now. So we are plowing on all these energy verticals and trying to take the skill set into this domain, additive, advanced manufacturing, industrial IoT, industrial logistics 4.0, and so on. Now, I just want to conclude with the one or two slides. This is the AMTC center that we have along with Intech Bangalore. This is absolutely a Atmanirbhar Bharat, so to say, because nothing is imported here. Everything is made in India, and that's what we want to do. And vanadium flow battery, we are with BFlowTech. Most likely, we will also commission this a small project for 200 kilowatt hour, and we will show how we can integrate to a energy storage. And our idea is by the end of this year to somehow demonstrate a 500 kilowatt hour capacity energy storage battery. And our focus now is mostly on Make in India and next generation computing, Atal innovation. And we want to position ourselves in a place where we can count on our own innovations. Just to give an idea that where all we have plugged in, why we became Energy University, we are not limited only to solar photovoltaics. This is a very old story now. It is becoming an old story. Now we've become 2 megawatt connected to grid. Then we also have a very strong presence of Siemens Automotive Center of Excellence and geothermal, probably the first academy in the country to demonstrate 40 kilowatt capacity. So we are there, and we are happy that we are in the policy advocacy. We are with Suzlon on wind energy, and I think that's the way we want to do. But we are helpless when our finance minister talked about semiconductor mission program. We see a big lacuna there for trained manpower in semiconductor industry. So we are trying to reposition ourselves through our ECE and other courses, how to strengthen our expertise in VLSI format. So this is where I would like to stop and take some questions later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Sundar. It's very interesting to hear you talk about the TRL levels and your transforming education part. And you also referred to the skill development and Maruti Center. Maybe at some point in time, we'll probably look at maybe even research in skill development as one of the initiatives and one of the questions we could ask later. But thank you so much for your insight. Professor Tuli, can we... you're on mute, Professor Tuli. Yeah.
Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So let me just start by first saying that I'm going to have two perspectives over here. Perhaps Ravi missed it out. I'm basically a professor of electronics engineering, having spent almost my student and professional life at IIT Delhi. I was also the Dean R&D at IIT Delhi. So perspective both from the IIT angle and now at Shiv Nadar, how we want to shape a young university which is in the private sector, but with ambitions. So first, let me start by saying that this topic I've covered so many times during my career, both as an administrator, as a professor. So I have a little different take on it. I'm not going to get so serious like Manoharan did. I've also been married almost as many years as I've been talking about this subject. So I've sort of come to realize that the first take on this is to look at what is a sustainable partnership, right? We talk about industry academia, and I think of a good Indian marriage in that context. So first of all is the perspective itself. When you get into a partnership, you need to know what is each other's perspective, right? And I think sometimes we have missed this bus. At least in the initial years, we were not clear what is it that you want, why are you getting married, why are you getting into this partnership? It was just expected that you would do it. And I just want to focus that there are a lot of expectations that industry and academia should collaborate. And now it's very clear, why should you do it? Things have changed. So that brings me to the second part. After the perspective is the expectation, you will share this, we'll share resources, we'll set up things over here. But again, we do this without thinking about the third part. Our country has a very different environment and circumstances than what we try and do from the West. And many times you try to pull in things from the West, thinking it will work over here. We try to get into industry, labs, etc. but again, without being very clear about the expectation about these things. The last point, these are just pointers and we'll discuss it. And last part is the commitment. It's the trust factor. I've heard this word very often in such meetings. The trust is lacking. Ultimately, I would say positively, it's the commitment which you bring on the table from each side based on your long-term perspective, expectations, and right. So just to set, if you look at the word I'm trying to say is sustainable partnerships. Start and go things will keep on coming. They have come in the past. A point which I have not put here is the term. Whenever industry and academia collaborate fruitfully, it has to be over a long term. So you have to think very clearly that, is it just a 3-month short project which you're doing as a consultancy from a faculty, or it's having a chair professor who builds up, or institutional to institutional collaborations. And I think we have sort of not been clear about what are these time lines which we are thinking about. My second or third slide is about what is it that you do, and I'm going to spend a little time over here. From an industry perspective, I found out, well, you can do it by setting up laboratories, centers of excellence, as Professor Manoharan talked about. You can have industry chairs. Ultimately, right now, we do also need to have much more, what should I say, realistic guest faculty coming in from industry, really imparting what the industry is doing. And of course, the placement opportunities are there. But in this industry context, let me come to a very different. India up till now was more centered around, let's say, the bachelor's range of students and faculty. I think what we have to realize, and Professor Sesrabudhi would realize, we have now moved on to the stage we are producing enough PhDs in engineering and technology. So that has been a real shift in the last 10, 20 years, that it's no longer BTech centric or bachelor centric. We really should be talking about PhD problems being shared between industry and academia. For me, that's the crux when you move to a mature partnership with industry. Research scholars, for example, we still don't think in terms of postdoctoral fellows. They're really the point where the manpower which actually can be the catalyst, which changes things, which is there a manager. So the perspective again is important. It's just not. Universities, of course, will provide space, infrastructure, but the one which I have outlined is the selected faculty. Not every faculty is geared to interact with industry, and you have to recognize it. In fact, one of the jobs of the deans, etc., and the heads is to recognize which of their faculty is actually amenable to interacting. It requires a lot more of thoroughness. It requires, as Professor Moran talking about, TRL levels, not just a proof of concept. What we are also missing over here is the student. Of course, now in the last few years, we have seen a lot of resurgence again in the student opportunities. So many of these events are held, innovation policies have come, entrepreneurship, startups are being given a lot of encouragement. But again, my stress is going to be not just for the bachelors. It has to be a concerted policy of all of us, including the government, about research scholars. It's time we started thinking about our PhDs and postdocs much more seriously if you want to come up to an R&D level in the world. Of course, the last point, without going, says that policies, the new education policy is there, the skill policy is there, R&D policy is there. But if I may say that one thing which we should also be doing is looking at creating a cadre of people who are, just like I talked about postdocs on the academic side, it should be about a class of cadre of people in the industry side who can interact with the academy. It requires a very different mindset, which I would. So if we encourage and promote that also, ultimately we need champions to take up from both sides and make these work. I think I will my initial comments are over here. I'll of course take up more questions and lively debates later. I thought I'll give a very different take this time rather than the normal things. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Tuli. This was clearly, like you said, different. And I will come back to you on some of the good things that you talked about. Especially the institute to institute partnership, along with the institute to industry partnerships. I think you talked about that and also about research sharing. So possibly there's a need to create a common platform where research could be possibly shared. So I'll come back to you when we have the Q&A session. Mr. Krishnan, can you go next, please?
Am I audible? Is my presentation visible?
Yes,
Yeah.
both. Yes to both.
So first of all, thanks to FICCI, and really honored to be presenting my views on how R&D in university campus can be enhanced, and this collaboration between academia and industry be reimagined. I want to briefly touch upon 3 areas. One, give a very brief global perspective of where we are. Mr. Ravi already covered many of the positive data points around it. I have some more to add around it. And then I want to briefly touch upon a very successful working model as a case study, the TCS case study, on how we at TCS engage with academia, and which has proven very successful and sustainable over the years. And then touch upon 8 key principles that I can abstract through this experience of ours for deliberation post my initial sharing of views. So let me start off. If we look at global R&D spend, almost 55% of R&D spend is coming from 3 countries, large countries: US, China, and Japan. India ranks 7th. Still some way to cover. And why is this important? Is because if we see in the last century, most of the cutting edge innovation, whether it's the internet or more recently the quantum computing, has actually come from R&D efforts that started off in academia. Hence, it's extremely important that we work together to figure it out on what would be a very successful model of collaboration. If you look at our spends over the years, it has stayed kind of constant. Yes, there are many positive data points around how India's ranking has improved, as Mr. Ravi already mentioned. The number of publications that are coming out, and clearly our ranking has improved. But at the same time, if you look at a developed nation, we continue to spend much less than what developed economies spend on R&D. If we look at the gross expenditure on research and development. But again, there are a lot of positives in the last many years, many unicorns coming up from startups, and clearly the policy support from the government in setting up state-of-art research in universities that can really create the talent that the industry needs. So if we look at what is the expectation of the industry, clearly the industry is looking at access to expertise that academia provides, and also de-risk some of the investments through a very collaborative ecosystem-led model. And from an academic perspective, clearly the expectation has been, how do we keep pace with the changing industry demand and keep our innovations relevant, applicable, so that they can be absorbed by the industry, innovations that create impact. And clearly this is much needed, this collaboration. More we strengthen it, greater is the social impact, greater is the economic impact, and as very rightly pointed out by some of the panel members, greater student and research outcomes. So let me shift gears and talk about how do we do it in TCS. We have significant commitment to areas of foundational research covering life science, behavioral science, mathematics, physical science. And we do all of this in a very ecosystem-led model, which is establishing a collaboration, not just with academia, but startups, VCs, our clients, the larger Tata Group. And listed below are some of the significant commitment. I don't know how many of you know that we have over 6,000 researchers in TCS engaging various research projects. We have one of the leading, file for leading patents, a significant amount of publications, and invested in lab facilities in partnership with top academic institutions, many of the top institutions in our country, but also globally. And also we collaborate with more than 2,500 startups and spend over 250 million yearly on research and development. The model that has worked very well for us is what we call as the co-innovation network. which is basically a collaboration between academia and the larger ecosystem comprising of our clients, startups, VCs, alliance partners. And this is basically a platform to enable us to generate new business opportunities for our clients, but at the same time, have a very simple methodology to collaborate, de-risk the investments from a corporate, but also from an academic angle, and ensure that innovations really lead to market impact and client impact. And I think we too have a process. We call this the new product and service development framework, which has several gates. And it starts off, with an idea conceptualization. And once an idea passes the first 3 gates, it moves into a working prototype, customer pilot, and then finally, how do we scale research so that it can create market impact for us and for the specific objective that we want to achieve through research. Not just in TCS, but also at TCS ION, we have established and are setting up a symbiotic partnership between industry and academia. We call this the learning and practice zones, so that the infrastructure, the labs, the facilities across the country that are set up can be utilized to create a hybrid learning model which can engage the students, research scholars, and even create locally available experts in those labs that can create a very powerful learning experience in some of the programs that we are working with academia to strengthen. We did hear on how the academic curriculum needs to be revamped. And what we believe is not just the revamp, but also leverage some of these centers so that the real learning can be truly democratized. And students across the country can have locally available centers to try their hand in the best of technology from the best of companies in those research labs. We call this the learning and practice zones. With that, let me leave with 7 to 8 key messages. Clearly, this kind of partnerships has its genesis, I would say, with the industry actively working with academia, as I've shown on how TCS does it, in proactively looking at curriculum design, review to make the curriculum abreast with what the industry needs. My fellow panelists also spoke about stakeholder engagement. I cannot more than agree with that in terms of faculty engagements as consultants to help the industry gain access to cutting edge research, cutting edge expertise, and also student engagement in terms of sponsored research, internships, to give them a real world view of what the industry faces as problems. And the models of engagement is extremely important in terms of how can we monetize the investments that have been made across the country and ensure that it is creating the impact. We see in our partnership, the institutes somehow doesn't even realize the kind of IP that they have generated, and only when we do a very rigorous analysis, we are able to come up with a plan to monetize it. Establishing center of excellence co-facilities in various institutes, like our partnership with IIT Madras, where our researchers and researchers from IITs are sitting together, collaborating on various research initiatives. Also, engaging with research scholars. We have a research scholar program that attracts about 40 plus researchers who join us in various capacities to work along with the industry. And finally, I would say that anything that we do has to lead to market impact, and hence a model like the Coin Network and a model where we establish specific what we call as a TCS spaceport, wherein we bring our customers. These facilities are located in top academic institutions, so that the research is well appreciated and is contextualized to meet customer and market need. So with that, let me take a pause. Thanks once again for the opportunity to share my views.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnan. You actually covered all the expectations that the industry has from the universities and the academic partners. So I think a lot of what I intended to kind of ask, you already covered. And I think the model that you presented about how to strengthen the industry-academia partnership could actually serve as a model going forward for a lot of us to take it to our respective industries and get back. So thanks for sharing that perspective.
Thank you.
Dr. Anil Shastrabudhe, sir, we would like to listen to your views and your remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. In fact, three panelists, starting from Professor Sundar, Professor Sunit Tuli, and Mr. Krishnan, have already elaborated on almost all the aspects of what needs to be done in terms of industry connect by the academic institutions in terms of partnerships. And this word partnerships is important because since my college days, we have been talking about industry institute interaction. This interaction is a bygone word actually. If you keep only interacting on one occasion in a seminar or for placement purposes, industry coming to an institution, we remain where we are. And therefore, we have to move several steps forward in terms of not just interactions, but also collaborations and partnerships. And that's why here the emphasis which Professor Sunit Tuli quite often said partnerships. Right, he compared it with marriage, that how we have some expectations from each other as partners. So the same way between industry and institute, clearly there are expectations. And how do we engage with each other? How do we move ahead? How do we take care of the surrounding environment and the requirements of the government as well? That's why the triple helix model, which Sundar had said, is also equally absolutely important, because there is a role for the government to play, there is a role for academic institutions to play, and there is a role for industry to play. And so we have to all have in a form of a tripod. He said triple helix, but I'm saying tripod. And we know that on two legs we cannot stand, except the human beings. Human beings stand on two legs, but other animals require four legs. So for a stable thing, we require a tripod, and therefore this tripod is very, very important. Now there are several initiatives through which we can achieve this. We started by talking about in the beginning, Ravi said that we have a lot of reforms which we brought in. One of them is about curriculum itself. Whatever curriculum is going to be designed and delivered to the students in the colleges and universities, maybe and from IITs or small college, I think that curriculum brings in a lot of value to the education that is being imparted. And unless we do that, we cannot move forward. So the essential part is how do we bring in, one is multidisciplinarity, so that students sees from left side, left brain, right brain usage, everything starts off. And also along with that, foundations of all of those subjects are also taught. And then you give opportunity for doing innovation and research right from early time. Why should we start research only when someone has done masters and while doing PhD? And I have umpteen number of examples in some of the institutions who have practiced this, that undergraduate students have published excellent papers, they have filed patents. And that was the time when I was speaking about college time. And recently, after I have joined as chairman in AICT, I received emails from some of the school kids, those who are in, say, 7th standard, 8th standard, and some of the phenomenal work that they have done is, even faculty in IIT may not have imagined. There are so many out-of-the-box kind of things which have done. They have formed companies, they have been entrepreneurs, they have created a business. They have also become, not only small players, but big players. They have unicorns also, some of them now. So therefore, I think we need to respect that the critical thinking, analytical ability, innovation, creativity, how do we bring it right from school time? And therefore, the new national education policy which came in 2020 has all those elements for progressing in that direction. And therefore, our curriculum becomes a foundation. If we have the right kind of a curriculum and then right aptitude for the teachers, and they must be able to take care of it. Curriculum may be there, but if you are in the same old age methods, I think we will not be able to transform ourselves. And therefore, that faculty training, faculty development, experiential learning, when Krishnan was saying that they have so many experiential labs, I think every faculty member must go during vacation, maybe not every year, but once in 4 or 5 years at least, to such centers, not only in TCS, but in many other industries for 2 months. And that's why we have made for promotion mandatory 2 months of internship for faculty members. And if you don't do it, you don't go from assistant professor to associate and associate to professor. And even early time for getting yourself regular faculty, or what we call tenure faculty in US terms, which in India we say that probation is over, now you are a regular faculty, a permanent faculty. For that also we have said you must have at least a couple of months of internship and 8 modules for teachers. So therefore, teacher training, teacher evaluation, teacher development is a very fundamental thing if we have to really move forward, both in innovation research space, not only in teaching. And therefore, my request to industry partners, Krishnan is here and Panchananda is there, both of you, from your perspective, you put in your effort with the industry. FICCI is here, FICCI is also listening. I keep talking to CII, NASCOM also, so that you must provide this kind of an exposure to our faculty members, and only then we can expect something back from them. That's why when Sunit was saying that expectations, from a regulator also there are some expectations from the industry, if you fulfill them in terms of faculty training on one side. Second one, which we have been often talking about in the last 3 years, is mandatory internship. We know that in the case of medical education, after 4.5 years of program, without going through internship, they are not allowed to register, not allowed to practice. But when it comes to engineering, or when it comes to science, or when it comes to commerce, I think we go to a university, study the courses, we may get a high percentage of marks, we may be gold medalists from the universities, and if you ask where is it applied, how is it applied, I think we are blank. And therefore, internships become very valuable for students. When students go to internships, naturally they start looking around. And the 5 senses, of course, 6th sense is also there. Many people talk about 6th sense these days, but the 5 senses which everyone has, they must be utilized fully. And when they are in the industry during internship, the observation that they do, all the 5 senses may be made use of, and a lot of innovation can come out of that. A lot of research will come in. And therefore, social connect, social impact, and while doing all of this and developing new products and processes, how we will not damage environment. Because I was coming from the Niti Aayog arranged program in Vigyan Bhavan today, and that's why I was traveling in car in the beginning when you were all starting. And I thank Ravi for taking care of being a co-chair in the beginning. Otherwise, I should have spoken. He spoke so wonderfully well. And that was about carbon, how carbon footprint, which is creating a problem for environment, carbon sequestration, how economy of carbon has to be developed in a way that it is not zero, but net zero by 2070, which the Prime Minister has talked about. All of that to introduce our school children, our college or universities must become hub for innovation and research. And there are huge challenges. Carbon is only one challenge. There are challenges for water, challenges in transportation, challenges in terms of healthcare. In education itself, there is a challenge because we have reached out to only 27% in higher education. We want to reach 50% in the next 10, 15 years. Therefore, how does online education or the distance education be as powerful in terms of educating our new generation of students who are aspiring from rural areas, tribal areas, who cannot afford to come to a city and stay in a hostel and then pay money, very large quantum, and then get, therefore, how affordable education is possible through digital means. TCS Ion has some example, but there are how many other products are, all of these are going to be there, and along with how even research can be promoted online. This is what we have learned in the pandemic, except where you require hardcore experiments in terms of instrumentation, facility, etc., which is there in central places where we have to go. Otherwise, many theoretical research has happened during pandemic in terms of using computational power that exists at our doorsteps today. And that's why the number of papers, Ravi, you are rightly pointing out in the beginning that India stands now in the 5th position in terms of number of research publications from Indian universities and the institutions. But when it comes to still top 1/4 quartile, top 25% quality journals, we stand at 12th. So it means we have a long jump to do, which we say each time that 12th is not good enough for a country of our size with 1.4 billion population. Krishnan, I remember my mentor in College of Engineering Pune Dr. F.C. Kohli, he used to say that when India has 1/6 the population of the world, we have no business to be poor. We have no business to be, less than anything which is 1/6 of the world. Our cake should be, in terms of research, in terms of anything, should be 1/6 of the whole world. And if we are not able to achieve, something is wrong in our entire system, and we need to improve upon that. So we are doing our pitch in terms of taking the colleges, universities on board, faculty development program, innovation cell, which we have established, Smart India hackathons, which we are holding for the last 4 years. Each one of them has those elements which will connect institutions with the industry. And once you are connected, you should become partners. You should collaborate on every aspect. Both should feel for each other. That heart-to-heart contact is important. Only on paper and file contact is not good enough. This is what I have been pitching all the time. I'm sure this is my initial pitch. If there are any questions, and then we will answer to each other. We'll have some more suggestions, and let us all work together that in the next 10, 15 years, India should reach its true position of being the global leader in everything, whatever you call, not only ease of doing business or the quantum of research publications. We must become the Vishwa Guru, which is what is our capability, and we must reach there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, it's always so inspiring to hear you. I think you've kind of set the right markers, sir, for when you talked about faculty training, when you talked about curriculum, when you talked about research online. I mean, that's so refreshing to hear that some of these things can be actually done involving students, undergraduate level. And absolutely, in terms of schools, there is possibly a need to change the mindset in terms of who can do research, and also a change in terms of maybe research is in our DNA. I mean, right from childhood, we ask questions, so we seek answers. So in some sense, that is research, and maybe that's how I think it's very refreshing to hear from you, sir. And as all the 4 panelists and of course Dr. Sahasrabudhe have possibly covered a lot of wide gamut of what some of the questions that we would wanted to pose, and they've already got answered. So I also know there's a paucity of time. There's only one question that kind of jumps out at me when I heard all 4 of you. What is the right research? How does what kind of research lends itself for a good industry-academia outcome-based partnership? Because end of the day, it's about the right question you ask to research, which will then lead to an outcome. So is there a model that the panel thinks would be that we can talk about? So maybe if I can request Professor Tuli to come in first, and then we can. Professor Tuli?
Yeah, so I hope I've understood your question. Typically, a project which would come from an industry is much more well-defined than, let's say, the DST kind of projects, right? It's very focused. Secondly, it right now tends to be of a much shorter duration with very clear deliverables. Now that's what generally is now. But I think what has to change going forward is that we should not be interacting, to use what Anil's word was, just not interacting for short-term things. We have to have a longer-term partnership. You develop a subject, you develop an area as a leader, which means you don't follow what is happening in the world. You actually should be coming out with this. Now, this requires a much more sustained partnership, over a longer term. So you may build all these vehicles of labs, centers of excellence, but what is the expectation from that has to be of a much higher level. I think as a country, we should be expecting much more now. I'm sorry, I use the same words over here than what we are doing in the shorter term. So that's my short answer, Ravi.
Okay. Professor Sundar, would you like to take a stab at this question? And while you're answering that, if you could also, Dr. Sahasrabudhe and all of us talked about this tripod or triage between government, industry, and academia. So how do we select the right project outcome-led? And you talked about a lot of outcomes in your presentation. And how can we work on a model between government, industry, and academia?
First of all, I'm identifying that all three of us in the panel are from IIT. I was from IIT Kanpur, where I was the first guy to start the faculty entrepreneurship model. But those were all, we didn't even knew about the NBA accreditation, NAC accreditation, nothing. We were absolutely enjoying ourselves doing, and it was all social engineering. Anything there, right from a wind tunnel facility down to any frugal innovation, we were driven by the demand, the need. So it was a very joyful engagement with the industry. We never did it for the sake of any mark or accreditation, but once we have come out to the university side, it's all about ticking the checklist. So I think universities should be given a lot more encouragement to get into this industry partnership. And industry also doesn't bid with you just like that. Just because they have a CSR, they don't just come and say, okay, take it. Because they want to align and see, okay, if it is on energy transition projects, for example, they want to know what is the most important thing government is looking for. So now the gear is shifting all the way from solar to green energy now. And now where is the green energy? And industry wants to plow into academia for leadership only if government is having that as the thinking pattern. And for example, $5 trillion economy, we want to organize a workshop. Now, what is the mindset of government in terms of renewable energy versus the industry's preparedness? So I think we need to understand both the preparedness of the industry versus the vision that is set by PM's vision on many verticals. During the finance minister's stuff, when she announced $75,000 investment into semiconductor, it was actually a shocking revelation that we are very, very ill-equipped for such a big mission. So we need a lot of encouragement on the university side. I'm sure Professor Saraswati will totally agree that there is a big difference in the preparedness as far as IIT is concerned versus universities. Therefore, there needs to be a lot more pampering. I would use the word carefully, pampering from industry, especially with universities. Only then they will rise to the occasion. But this need not be the same case for IIT. IIT is willing to take more bounces, more rigorous problem-solving exercise. But the university is wanting to fill that gap, come there. But we need a lot more fatherly mentoring, like government undertaking the entire top 100 NARF ranked universities on board, and then give them a charter, then 100 to 200, give them a charter, then everybody feels they belong to it. Now it's more about, trying to sort of warm up activities going on. Many verticals, what AICT has laid down, only now it is a big revelation for universities to catch up. So it will take at least 2-3 more years before we start talking aggressively on the industry language. But I'm very happy about the proactive way government has laid out all the schemes through DST, AICT, and so.
Thank you, Professor Sundar. Mr. Krishnan, same questions to you, but if you can also add the element of outcome, because what are the kind of outcomes that the industry would expect out of these interactions, and then we can put it.
Yeah. So I would say that we need to first categorize this partnership in terms of what is the objective that we want to achieve, right? And that's why in any research partnerships that we do with academia, we look at, okay, are we trying to create a societal impact? Is it, an impact for our customers? Is it an impact that we want to create on a specific technology dimension, unsolved technology, hard problems? So first, we need to clearly define, the impact area that we are looking at. And second is, I think Professor Tuli mentioned, clearly define in terms of what is this partnership all about, in terms of like what are the outcomes that we want to generate, what are the work streams that we want, specific research to be done with, rigorous review mechanism in place based on, as Professor Sundar mentioned, the life cycle of the innovation, right? Not all innovations will, necessarily lead to, like a $1 billion product. It might be solving certain components of the problem that the industry faces. So, clearly define the life cycle of an innovation, right from foundational research to, market ready, large scale impact kind of research. And as we define such a process-driven approach, there will be more rigor and there will be more clarity in terms of how each party and what the industry is bringing, what does the academia bring. And one very successful model on how we have done this is, as I explained to you, the pace sports, where our clients come to experience. Because if you look at a client, they are facing industry problems, not necessarily that they can be solved by today's technology. So when they come and experience the kind of research that are happening, they're able to generate the ideas. They're at a level of thinking on in terms of, okay, how can I take an idea and how can I make it market impactful? So that's where that collaborative model partnership, like Professor Anil mentioned, comes into play, because possibly a researcher might not be able to think the market application. Even TCS might not be able to think. So that's where all players need to come together, understand what's happening. And like I mentioned, when we go and look at some of the innovations that are done in academia, we are surprised the kind of IP that the academia is having, which is not taken to market. So that's where the real problem is. And if we establish such a working model, a collaborative working model, I think we should be able to see much more impact coming out of research efforts that people are spending from the academia.
Thanks, Krishnan. Quick answers. I'll just go around. Is research outcome, should we measure it on short-term basis or long-term basis? We start with you, Krishnan. Then we can. So, is research to be measured short-term basis or long-term basis? Because in pharma sector, for example, there are so many researches happen. Some of the products don't even see the light of the day, but all you need is one or two products to kind of make the innovation and make the cut. So, what's your view?
I would say both, but if I were to pick one, it should be long-term. Research by nature, you're trying to innovate on things that, today cannot be solved, right? So you have to look at it from a long-term perspective, but at the same time, have a rigor so that, you know how you're progressing towards that long-term goal. But primarily long-term, but should have milestones, as I think all of us were talking about.
Dr. Sundar, what is your view?
Yes, definitely. It has to come from within. If it is enforced, it will be fabricated. But I think by nature we need to understand the country's direction, the challenge, the vision, and unless we are consumed by the passion for anything that the government is looking from us, I don't think research will be a experience. Then we will be just subscribing to some forceful act. So somehow, I think this beautiful research ecosystem depends on the leadership and management of every university. If we know how to do that, I think we can easily subscribe to whatever NBA, AICT or UGC is looking from the universities. I think it's a becoming process. It will take little time.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Tuli, if I may ask you the same question.
Your question is really making me smile again. Because,
you said you want to have fun, so I hope you're having
Thanks a lot. For an academician, of course, research is his lifeline. You can spend lifetimes, if I may say so. But your question is very specific about the outcomes. And I think I again somehow go back to the analogy of marriage. It seems to be on my mind. You have milestones, as he said, about when you go over here, expectations over here. But if we do not have a long-term view, then the research is never bound to come to a level where it's going to be something. So the vision has to be a long-term one, because that is where I mentioned institution-to-institution collaborations should go over lifetimes of people. Until you don't have that, even the shorter ones will be shorter and die away. So that's what I would feel, that if we, at this juncture in our country, we must be looking for long-term. I just, one more thing comes to my mind, about 10, 12 years back, when we used to think about India mein kya hoga, the word was used. It used to be said that we will be only good for boutique research. This word was used, boutique research. We will not be able to do anything in a sustained manner. We will not be able to really think long term. It will be short term. I think we have certainly negated that in part, and we should negate that. That can only come with long term.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think one last question before I bring in and request Dr. Sahasrabudhe for his final views. But quickly, I mean, in terms of, you talked about, Professor Tuli, you talked about institute-to-institute partnership. And I know we are talking about industry academia today, but you talked about institute-to-institute partnership. And if I were to take that statement and Dr. Sahasrabudhe talked about, how to bring in all of research together, a portal, online research, a structure of sorts, if you will. How do you see institute-to-institute research, and how do you look at the infrastructure, the R&D infrastructure to share and collaborate?
Is the question to me, Anil, or
yes? No, it is to you first, sir. And then
okay. Sorry, okay. When I meant institute to institute, because it was really when I felt about the timeline, because only when you have that kind of a top leadership talking long term, that's one. Institution to institution, of course, can be in specific areas, and I've many times felt that research we seem to take as a all-encompassing thing. We should really be looking at very sector-specific research, very area-specific research, break it problem, and have institutes collaborate. We sometimes do not worry about the geography. Geography is a big thing. For research, if you really want to do it, there has to be a long communication, visits with each other, which is difficult sometimes over distances. Now, so many things when you look at institute partnerships, including geography, geospatial, combined, of course, with online, should be taken into consideration. That's one. Secondly, as a country, when we grow, I'm always reminded about, for example, the nuclear in space, which thrived in India when nothing was there. We tend to make it something like a basic versus applied, but the answer is not in basic. There's some things, for example, semiconductor you mentioned. We've missed the boat many times on that. Until you think that it's important, and that's as a leadership position, then you have to go all out and do it. And for that, it can only be at the higher level. That's what I meant by institute. Secondly, for example, the government is now coming up with the institutions of eminence. Now there is also an institution of eminence. You are now identifying certain people who can be fast movers, can change things, whether it's for ranking. Similarly, I think we should do also for industry. There are many good colleges, many good institutes who work with industry in specific areas. We should actually be giving them policy-wise something, for example, giving more equipment grants. Krishnan talked about, those learning. So this should be set up more over there. And sector by sector, we should be looking at R&D between industry and partnership. So that's what I mean. Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, would you like to share your comments?
Yeah, I think you had posed 3 questions. I would like to combine all of them, which you had given to them. First one, I was very happy that Dr. Sundar as well as Dr. Tuli both have gone from an IIT system to a private university or whatever it is. So that means the other side of the coin they have been able to see. And that's why if we were only in one cocooned area, we would always think that IIT should get more money. And they are too much pampered is visible when they go to the other side of this spectrum. And therefore, I'm very happy about that. Secondly, he said that in IIT, we don't even know about accreditation. Why is it done? How is it done? And therefore, this outcome-based education or outcome-based whatever is followed in the accreditation system. And therefore, when we are collaborating with industry, there must be clear objective or outcome to be achieved out of that research which the industry is funding. Otherwise, industry is not so much willing to fund for open-ended research. Of course, some amount of open-ended research, even industry should fund, but they have immediate requirement. They want to solve a particular problem so that they will bring in a product, it will become profitable. And in turn, when it is profitable, they can put in more money. And that's why they have their own interest. And therefore, how do we cater to that is based on a short-term vision for solving that particular problem. But as far as academic institutions themselves are concerned, or the government, we have two types of things. One is some long-term activity which should be taking care of some of the issues which whole globe is facing, whether it is in terms of environment, water. These are being talked about every now and then in United Nations. We have sustainable development goals to be addressed. So there are some compulsions, and therefore an organization like TIFAC or Niti Aayog will bring out some grand challenges, and academic institutions have to work on them in order to solve those problems. They are in the mission mode. Maybe it will require 10 years, 5 years, but we have to solve them. But there are certainly open-ended research. I think concrete examples are that of X-ray or fiber optic. No one thought that it would be having some great application subsequently, but those open-ended blue sky research became very useful for the entire humanity. And therefore, how the academic institutions must have a long-term vision, certain area in which they should start working, and some results will come. Therefore, if we are to measure such outcomes, it is very difficult. It will be measured by someone else 50 years down the line. But we should never stop that. But such people who are passionate about it, they should be given full freedom to do that. That is the autonomy which the institutions enjoy. But there are some others who are also interested in solving the quick fix solutions, and that's where they should also be allowed. So an institution will have all variety of people, so both should be allowed to do it. And as far as sharing of infrastructure is concerned, for a country like ours, which is still a developing economy, I think we must share our resources. There is no other way. The PSA, Dr. Chidambaram had created a center where our IITs, Indian Institute of Science, and all these institutions having high cost equipment, they must be allowed to be used by an ordinary college faculty who has just completed his PhD from IISc or IIT. And if we are not allowing, the research will not flow there. And those students will never be able to do something because this cost is also very important. If you look at the budgetary provisions, IIT has something, 1/10 of that will come to some NIT, 1/100th will go to a state government college, and some private college will have even less than that, 2/100th of that. How can you expect all of them to run the same race and come to the same level? And that's why I think we have to see holistically how all of these people are going to be taken care of. But we cannot fund the same way as IITs are funded to a small college. That is also equally true. But there are sparks which exist in those institutions, and how do we pick them up, which we call sometimes gifted children, and bring them to IIT? Then don't talk about your criteria of entrance examination or whatever test, because they have such spark that they will provide you immense outcome out of their 2 years, 3 years stay in your institution. And therefore, some out-of-the-box admissions also should be allowed, which we are not allowing today. We are all going by JEE Advanced and all that. But identifying such kind of candidates is important, which will make our vibrant research institutions in our country, which will give us immense result in the next 5 to 10 years. So short term, long term, both are equally important.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. In closing, I know we are on top of the hour. Since the liberalization of our economy in the early 1990s, we have clearly seen the next transformational change in our national policy in the 2010s, 2014s. Through a number of policy guidelines related to education, NEP 2020 was a clear game changer. It has clearly set us apart for growth. The startup ecosystem, access to finance, all this adds up. With the overarching Atmanirbhar vision very clearly articulated for us, I think the panel clearly explored how industry can work in collaboration, in partnership to enhance R&D efforts, to address local as well as global issues. And to enable this, we also talked a bit about some of the structural and competency DNA changes, the mindset level changes that we need to permit to in such a thriving collaboration. I always believe that I always talk about 3 C's. When I say the first C is create, the second C is collaborate, and the third C is communicate. So I think all these 3 C's are so important for us. Not only we should create, and creation will happen through collaboration, and the best way is to kind of communicate what we are doing so that people understand and people join the vision of what we have. And I think that to me, a lot of steps like Niti Aayog has come out with a lot of these transformational steps to increase involvement of entrepreneurs and researchers, to foster scientific innovations. A lot of investment in R&D comes from Department of Science and Technology, AICTE, and some of the other organizations are working on the human capital aspect of where this goes from there. So I can clearly see exciting times ahead. And I'm very clear that research will continue to be and will probably be more of a backbone than what it has been till now. So thank you. A very big thanks to our chair, Dr. Sahasrabudhe sir. Very inspiring. Whatever you said resonates with a lot of us. And a big thank you to Professor Manoharan, Professor Suneet, and Mr. Krishnan for sharing their views with us today. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure hosting this panel, and I really enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to, Dr. Pankaj, you want me to close the...
I mean, maybe Dr. Bhattacharya is also there, maybe 1 or 2 minutes each, if you want to just kind of give a
Sure.
overall... Professor Shobhik Bhattacharya is also there. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, Dr. Shobhik, do you want to go in first and then I can probably close after that? If that's okay with you?
I was not prepared to say anything because I thought if this was a concluding session, I wanted to attend only. But no, fine. I'll just make a summarizing. Hello, Professor Sahasrabudhe. I still feel you are connected. The inaugural session was very good, and of course we always have the glam quotients in inaugural session and also the substance. And so I tried to attend several sessions, but could not do 100%. But I think a couple of sessions, the one I had the opportunity to moderate, and also the one on skilling, upskilling, reskilling, that part, which Professor Saxena moderated. I think these two addressed a pretty important, the industry. FICCI normally looks at the industry aspect of it. FICCI is in a vantage position to do that. So I think we addressed important issues. I prefer to do things with a little more specificity, so that we can actually draw something very specific. Discussions. I think something Pramath pointed at the beginning of that session as one of the panelists. Pramath Sinha pointed at that. We talk about industry, academia, partnership, cooperation. We have been talking about it for the last 20 years, and it has become a sort of hackneyed, cliched topic. There's a lot less action than general talk, etc. So things should not get lost in the general approach. So there should be physical steps, there should be steps and all that. For example, a large number of institutes are now almost paralyzed in terms of they are not going to be eligible for CSR grants, which they were eligible till August last year. So there is this new regulation, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, I am not personally not able to figure out why this restriction has come, and I'm sure we'll be able to do something from the FICCI side to approach the government that good support was happening and it is supposed to be growing, etc. So these steps, these points do come out from such discussions. I think such gatherings are important in the sense that we move forward in doing things better, in improving our performance as academic institutes, as interfaces with the industry, with the triple helix with the government and all that. So, unless we take steps, then such events are not useful to the audience, to the some of us who are in higher education industry and all that institutions. It's a wonderful. I don't have any statistic how many people attended such sessions. I don't know if Rajesh and Nidhi and Sumit, you all can enlighten us on that. I was curious, but I think we generally addressed the issues. The sessions were designed nicely. It was a good spread. It was a good offering, good bouquet. And Ravi, over to you. I think the more formal, I did a little bit of an extempore here, but more formal closure from you.
No, thank you so much, Shobik, because sometimes, it is you spoke from your heart. I think that really connected. And I think I kind of share your passion and your penchant for quantifiable, definable outcomes. And I think even after the first FICCI meeting, we spoke about how do we quantify and make sure that we pick up 5 or 6 things that we can actually deliver and show results. But I think, my job at hand is to close the session. So, good afternoon, everybody. Strategic R&D aligned to national objectives and market need has a possibility to drive economic growth through innovation and entrepreneurship. And to achieve this, many people talked about the tripod, the tri-H helix model of academy, industry, and government, and the need for these 3 entities to work together. Over the last 1.5 days, we have discussed many facets of enhancing the R&D in academia and dissected elements like skill, competency, apprenticeship, internship for learners. We talked about driving innovation, incubation, and entrepreneurship in academia. We talked about enabling family-owned businesses and how do you leverage industry to improve in-campus R&D. So the sessions underlined the importance of producing employable graduates on day 1 of employment, and this could be made possible with meaningful apprenticeship and internship programs. I think our panelists and experts also reiterated the importance of building a culture of lifelong learning and developing an entrepreneurial mindset along with certain other soft skills like communication and so on and so forth. So I think very clearly, given the backdrop of NEP 2020, everybody acknowledged that it is important to make a beginning to really look at things very differently from the way we have been looking, and how we can pave way for a very stronger and a very inclusive India. As a global supplier of talent, India is definitely a global supplier of talent. We must ensure that skilling and employability of our graduates meet the international standard and not just the local ones, the local demands. And therefore, it is a very, very strategic import for us to make sure that we get this part of it right. In conclusion, I thank all our speakers, panelists who took time and who contributed towards the success of this conference. I also thank all the participants who joined us throughout the various sessions in the bike platform and otherwise. I also take this opportunity in conclusion to reaffirm FICCI's commitment towards strengthening the industry, academia, and the government relationships to accelerate our country's growth trajectory. And like what Dr. Souvik said, we must try and work with 3 or 4 or 5 specific agenda items where we can clearly show progress and where we can clearly make an impact to what we are talking about in the tri-age of industry, academia, and government. We hope to meet all of you soon, hopefully in November, in person, and that too. So thank you once again, everybody, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, co-creators, for all your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye
Rajesh.
for now.
Thank you. Thank you.